All right, well, welcome back once again to Fireside Chats Without Fire in this discussion with me, Pastor Joe, and Pastor Vinny. And, each week we've been kind of having different conversations. And one that came up this week that I wanted to talk about, I've actually mentioned to a number of you at our church because I used it as an entryway into a sermon one Sunday. And what I wanted to talk about was one day I was listening to a talk given by Al Mohler. And in that talk he was giving, he urged all the young men there who were about in their mid 30s, but not quite 40, to go out and purchase Leo Tolstoy's book, The Death of Ivan Illich. He said all men in particular needed to read that book before they turned 40 years of age in order to prepare themselves for their upcoming midlife crisis. And although that was directed, basically to men, Pastor Vinny and I today wanted to kind of talk about how you can prepare for that coming midlife crisis, or maybe you're already going through it. And so let's just begin there, Vinny. Someone schedules an appointment with you and they say, I kind of feel like I'm maybe dealing with a midlife crisis. And any thoughts you would have for them to think through
Yeah.
that biblically?
Yeah. So just for myself, I can say, my body is feeling the effects of a fallen world. My appearance is changing. I just had my silver anniversary, and I'm pretty sure the silver has to do with what's happening with my hair, right now, maybe.
Don't get
Um,
me on the topic of talking about hair, please.
I don't have the energy that obviously that I did at 25. My body is failing me in different ways. And this is really about limits. I think Paul's really helpful where he tells us that God's grace is sufficient for him, or he learned that in his trials and that thorn in the flesh. And if we think about, what Paul said there, we really need the grace of God to be with us during this time when we're kind of reflecting and we're realizing that things don't work the way that they should.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I think it's a natural time of questioning. Um, for instance, I've been working hard the last 25 years in ministry. What do I have to show for it? Maybe there's people out there, particularly guys, who may have kind of that desire to achieve, and they may be saying, what do I have to show for this? Or maybe someone has been raising a family and they're saying, what do I have to show for it? Like, my kids are going
Right.
to college now, and are my kids where I thought they would be? A lot of parents are finding that their kids aren't, where they hope they would be.
Right.
Fill in the blank there,
Right.
just on this reflection. As you reflect back on your life, what are some of those things that you would be asking? It's a natural time of questioning. Um, and people might be saying right now, like, have I been building on the rock of Jesus in these areas, or have I been building on sand? And that can be really disappointing if you look back and you find that you haven't been building with Jesus' values. But what I would say is a great opportunity to realign with Jesus' values. If you
Right.
haven't been building on the rock, you might see that now and be able to make some corrections.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And this in some ways gets to our previous discussion. I know some people may feel differently about this, but you and I, we've already revealed to those who watch this and those who are part of our church that we're both Enneagram threes. And so what that means is that we're by nature, achievers. We like to do things. And so this is actually one of the things where I guess I don't feel like I'm in a midlife crisis, right? I don't foresee one coming. I guess I could be wrong about that. But those of us, those people who are watching this, who kind of are bent towards achieving, this could be a really difficult time for them because we do just what you said there. We say, oh my gosh, I'm almost 40, or maybe I'm almost 45 or 50, and what have I accomplished? And then of course that's dangerous because then you play the comparison game, right? And of course we live in the world of Facebook where people only post good things about themselves, and so then you compare how much they look, how successful they look, right, or how well their kids are doing and so forth, and you see, well, I'm not doing that. And I heard something once in a pastor's talk that really spoke to me, and so I'll get your thoughts on this, and I think maybe this will help those who are listening to this. And that is that I know I have to be reminded that life is not a competition to be won.
Yeah.
And so that's always helpful for me to remind myself that, yes, the way to think biblically is that God has, obviously, he's gifted each of us differently, and we have gifts that he's given us, and we're supposed to be good stewards of that.
Yeah.
But it's important not to compare ourselves with other people, and to realize that, that's the thing, is that we're actually not in competition with other people. And so that's something that I have to remember. I'll just throw that out there, and
Hmm.
maybe that word will help somebody. But
Yes.
anything you want to add to that, or any thoughts on that?
Maybe there's someone out there and they fear that this crisis is coming, or maybe they're facing it right now. And to them, I would just say, what I read that James Dobson had to say about this was that this is a door that you're going to enter. And I think I would think about it as a room you're going to enter. And the idea that you are going to exit this room, you're not going to stay in there forever. You are going to make it out. And especially if you seek God's presence and God's wisdom in this, you're going to exit this room that we would call midlife crisis. And I'm also encouraged by what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:16, where he says, so we do not lose heart, though our outer selves is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. So, God is moving me from one stage to a higher stage. I happen to love rivers and streams. And sometimes when you're going upstream or upriver, you have to go up a level. There's like a little dam or something like that, and you go up a level and you keep moving yourself up. And I think that's the image I have of what God's doing for us. So my body may be going downstream, but my inner man is moving against the current of this world. And God is picking me up and moving me to the next level. God is making all things new, basically.
Right,
So
right.
how much time am I giving God each day for this inner work is something that I ask myself, and I would encourage other people to ask, are you setting aside time for that inner work that God wants to do? And think about it, the more you focus on that, the more you're going to focus on eternity. This
Right.
crisis that we may be having and questioning, midlife crisis, whatever, is temporary, but my inner life is eternal.
Right, right. And one other thing we can say before we wrap this up is, when people think about life, right, and what they've gotten out of it, sometimes people feel like they've been gypped.
Yeah.
And and it makes me think about the book of Ecclesiastes, and what Solomon talks about in there is what do we have to gain from all of our work under the sun. But one of the things that I would say, that I try to encourage myself with, and would say to this situation of saying, oh my gosh, is this all I have to show for life? I thought I would be more satisfied in this. But I think what God teaches us through Ecclesiastes is that we need to accept life on the terms that God offers it.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think is true of our generation, I'll say my generation, and you can just extrapolate from that. But I think it might be more difficult for the generation coming after us. Is one of the things I see, and I wonder if in your counseling you see any of this, and that is that we kind of have like super duper high expectations of life,
Yes.
and of what we can get out of it. And I know, as I compare that to my grandfather's generation, I just see something different there.
Yes.
I just see, my grandfather willing to work at the same place for 50 years and not feel unfulfilled. And so I just wonder, that's what I ask myself is what are my expectations, and are they in line with scripture, and am I receiving life as God offers it to me, which is as a gift, to simply use the gifts he's given me to love my family, love the people around me, love my church, and leave the rest and the results in his hands about what he wants to do with that. So do you see that, and do you see that at all in your
Sure.
counseling?
Yeah, a lot of our counseling sessions actually are helping people grapple with expectations that they have that are unmet. Think of it,
Right,
if your expectations are here, and even if you get this close to having them matched, if you don't get where you thought you were going to get, there's this gap right here that we would call a
right, right,
dissatisfaction gap, and that
right.
can just kill you. Well, one of the a prayer I love is a serenity prayer, and in that it says that we take the world, this sinful world, as it is. We take the sinful world as Jesus did, as it is,
Right.
not as we would have it. And I would want this world to be a certain way, and I'd want things to be a certain way for me. And I have these expectations, but I have to face the world that Jesus did and realize that there are limitations. Um,
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, I think that's really good. I know we could keep going on this for a really long time, it sounds like, but I think that would be our main encouragement to people, is to consider those questions that you just asked, and maybe if they have something spark their interest, they could either leave a comment here, or those who are part of our church, they have our emails, they could write us, and we'd love to talk with them more about this. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think the main thing is to do that, set aside time, as you said, to really pray and reflect and ask God what he wants you to do with your life, and count all the blessings that he has given you, and accept life as it is and not as you would want it. So that's what I'm taking with me. So thanks again.
All right, we'll see you next time.